Now back to the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener Radio Show, which is presented to you by Power Planter Earth Augers, the official digging tool. To find the right size for your digging project, visit powerplanter.com. Now here are your hosts, Joey and Holly Baird.
Welcome back to the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener Radio Show. We're going to get into growing berry bushes. Now, everybody wants berry bushes in their property. Some people are able to have them. Other people are not. We are still debating that for the new transition of our garden. So there's some things that people need to know about berry bushes before they just go to their garden center, purchase them in a pot, or buy a bunch online, bare roots. And we'll talk about what that term means momentarily.
Like maybe you should know what currants taste like.
Yeah, you don't know what currants taste like. Mm-hmm. So first of all berry plants, excluding blueberries, are basically okay to plant in your native soil. Blueberries are the exception. Blueberries need a pH in the soil of 4 to 5.5, and you can do this finding out what your pH level in your soil is in a number of fashions. You can go and send your soil off to get it tested to find out nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, pH level, zinc, iron, all that stuff. There are some over-the-counter soil tests at your garden center that will give you a general estimate of what that soil pH is. But if you plant blueberries...
Typically your soil is not going to be at that pH just as it is.
In most parts of the country, it won't be. Now, if you do buy a blueberry plant and you plant it in the ground or in a container and with regular potting soil or native soil, that plant's going to die in a couple of days or within a week or two because it doesn't have that acidity that it needs in order to grow correctly. There are manufacturers of potting soil and mixes that do have that pH level for those type of plants. And you can find that material in most places in the country. But we talked about in the first segment, if you want to lower your pH, you can use sulfur. That can take up to a year prior to planting if you're going to do a blueberry patch. Or you can use iron sulfate, which can drastically change the pH within a couple of weeks or within a month. But you want to be aware of those things. And it's not just change it now and it's good forever. You've got to continue to adjust it throughout the growing conditions.
Right. So definitely you want to know what you're getting into when it comes to growing berry plants, berry bushes, what have you. You want to know, okay, so say, for example, it says small berries. That's referring to the size of the berries.
Not the
plants. So you want to know, like, okay, if you purchase a plant, whatever the variety is, how wide, how much room is it going to take? How tall is it going to get? Just because it's called a bush doesn't mean that it's going to be maybe like a hedge or
a shrub.
Like a shrub. You might have an 8-foot tall berry bush or end up with an 8-foot tall berry bush. You want to research if that's something that you can trim back and maintain so that it does stay smaller. So that's definitely one thing. Another thing is, if you have pets or little ones, you might want to know if it's going to have thorns or be thornless, or even for yourself, you might not want to be the one who has to pick the berries and get possibly scratched.
Now, they do have both varieties, and I don't know if I've ever told the story on this program, but my grandfather, he is 83, 84 now, and he refuses to eat blackberry pie, blackberry anything, because as a young child, he was forced to pick wash tubs. And people who are older in the generation knows that these are very large metal multi-gallon tubs of blackberries for days on end, because when he was younger, you go back 80 some odd years or 70 years, you picked and on the farm, that was what you survived with. And he will not eat blackberries to this day because he picked so many, and it just brings back, I guess, horrible memories.
Yeah, he's talked about it. I've heard him talk about it. He doesn't seem too happy about it.
To tell the story at all.
I mean, he's probably not picked, I'm sure, those berries for at least 60 years.
Right.
He's probably like, yeah. So
also with these berries, they all have distinct tastes, and it's just like growing vegetables. You want to know what they taste like before you put the effort in to growing this bush or shrub or whatever, and it has this unpleasant taste to you where others may find it very pleasant.
Right. That's something to keep in mind. Just like Joey and I were at the garden center and we were looking at berry plants and he was like, what about currants? And it's like, well, I've never had currants. How am I supposed to know what they taste like? What if we invest in some currant berry bushes, and I can't stand the taste of them? Maybe they taste like, I don't know. So like some people don't like the taste of cilantro. Same thing with berries.
And currants and gooseberries, they're more popular in Europe than they are in the United States, but it is making a come more popular here in the United States. But that's where that term comes from. And the garden center had them. So yeah, you want to be aware of some of these things. And we would like to get berry bushes, but you need to, these are not just a plant and they're done. Now there are wild blackberry bushes and that type of thing where nature takes care of them. When we have these in our garden, we have to take care of them in order for them to produce the most that they possibly can for us, and so they don't get out of control.
So another thing to keep in mind is what else besides you might be eating those berries. So if you live in an area with a lot of wildlife that could possibly eat those berries, birds are typically the predator of the berries. You might have to invest in some sort of netting.
And they'll get them one day before they're ready to harvest for you.
Yeah, they'll get them before you can. So one thing is to keep in mind where you're putting them, but also if you might need to invest in some sort of berry netting to prevent those birds from eating them.
If you're having a very large area, you can invest in what's called a fruit cage, where it's poles and then you put this netting over top of it, and it's like a greenhouse but netting to protect your plants. And that's more for the self-pollinating berries. And we won't. And there's all types of berries. There's raspberries, blackberries, gooseberries, currants, multiple color raspberries. There's a yellowish one that we saw at the garden center.
It was like what was it? Yeah, yellow raspberry.
Interested in that one, as well as strawberries. Let's not forget strawberries. Strawberries are, I think, one of the easier plants you can grow. Now, they all require a specific type of planting depth-wise. If you get them bare root from your garden, from an online retailer, you want to plant them at the same depth in which they were at. And you can see this on the stem. There's like a dark zone on it where that was where the soil level was. If you get them from your garden center, plant them in the same depth in which they were at in the container. Strawberries, you want to plant them at the same depth or above the crown, because if you plant them below the crown, it actually suffocates them and they will die. So you need to follow the regulation or the instructions on these plants to the T, because number one, they're going to be there for a long time, and number two, these are not necessarily cheap plants to initially buy. It's an investment that's going to provide years and years and years of produce for you, but you got to do it right the first time in order to get them established.
Right. So that's definitely something to consider, is do your research, think about what could cause problems for your berries, and definitely make a good decision as to where to put them. For more information, please visit thewisconsinvegetablegardener.com.